Today, I'm going to be solving a problem that I have in my knitting and maybe you have in your craft, and I'm going to do it in a way that is fun, free, and creative. So stay tuned. I've been knitting for a couple of years now, and I feel really comfortable when I sit down to knit, and I know a lot of stitches and I am used to using patterns, but I find myself every time that I get to certain stitches and certain pattern instructions, I cannot remember for the life of me how to do things. And so I'm constantly pulling out my phone and looking up the exact same stitches over and over again, and it's starting to drive me a little bit crazy. So today I'm going to be making a zine to help me with my knitting, to put in my knitting bag so that I can hopefully start to remember the things that I just haven't been able to make my brain hold on to. So if you don't know, zines are usually self-printed tiny little books. They're often done by hand and then printed very cheaply, or they could be handmade like one at a time, and they can contain anything from art to poetry to political information to educational information, and they're just really fun and kind of cover a huge range of topics. And so I really like making them. I've made a handful. These, I did not make all of these, but these are just some of my collection. And I thought it would be kind of cool today to sit down and try and go through all of the things that I want to try to remember when I'm knitting and put it in a zine that I can then keep in my knitting bag and carry with me instead of pulling out my phone and reading again and again and again how to do these things. I'm making a mini zine. I have a diagram featured here on the top left corner at the moment, but you just take one piece of paper. I'm choosing to use a printer sheet of paper, and you fold it a couple of times. The first one you fold long ways, and then you fold it twice on itself, and you've got your basic setup. Then you're going to take a pair of scissors and you're going to cut the center line, but not all the way through, and that's going to make it easier for you to fold your paper into a book. Once you're ready to fold, this is the best way to set it up. And now you've got a book. How cool is that? I spent a little while brainstorming what I wanted to include in my zine. I only have 6 workable pages because 2 of my 8 page are going to be the front and the back of the zine. So I wrote down what I thought I wanted to include and what I thought was reasonable to fit in a very tiny zine. And then I jumped on my computer and went to see sort of what the best resources were to pull from. And I'm honestly probably late to the party on this one, but I went to Pearl Soho's website and they have such an extensive catalog of different tutorials and explanations. So if you haven't checked out their website, you really should. What I'm going to do next is I'm going to type in all of the instructions for these different stitches on my computer and make them nice and small but also still legible, and then I'm going to print them out and cut them and start working on a little bit of a collage. So I think this is going to be fun. I'm cutting out all of my little text elements, and unfortunately I could only find wood glue to use on this, and that feels like a little bit overkill, but it's okay. I'm just putting a little blop on there, and then this is not really the final product. I will be using another piece of paper, so it just has to be stuck on there enough. I'm not too worried. Just finished cutting and gluing out all of my instructions onto my piece of paper. I'm going to let this sit and dry for a little while, and then what I'm going to do next is I am going to copy it into my printer and print out a copied version of it, and I'm going to go in and draw, make it beautiful, make it something that I want to look at, and we'll go from there. While I'm here painting and drawing, I just wanted to take a minute to talk a little bit about something that I've been thinking about, and that is the balance of creation versus consumption in a creative hobby. I think that it is really easy for me to get sucked into feeling like I need to buy something new to make myself better at my craft. Particularly with knitting, there's always a new yarn, a new pattern, a new tool. And I think online I see a lot of stuff where people are sharing about their favorite things or new things or things that they think are cool. And I find it really easy to get sucked into feeling like I'm missing out on having the new thing, or that I would be a better knitter if only I had the thing. And I think that that extends beyond knitting. I feel that way sometimes when I'm trying to draw or paint, that I'm not happy with what I'm doing or I'm not feeling inspired. And if I only had like a new pen or a new sketchbook or a new whatever, that maybe I would be a better artist, or maybe I would like what I was making more. And so me making this zine is me kind of trying to take a little push back at that feeling of needing to consume in order to make art. And this is certainly not me saying that you shouldn't buy a new tool or you shouldn't try a new thing, because I do think there's a lot to be said for having the right tool for the job and trying new things. But I just wanted to share sort of my thoughts on that and how I'm really trying to reframe my mindset into a more creative versus consumptive mindset. I finished my zine. Here, let me show it to you. Here she is. I decided to call it Knitting Spells and Incantations because I really do sometimes feel like I am looking at like a spell book when I go to look for knitting stuff. And then on the first page, I've got one of my more common things that I can't remember, which are the differences between make one right and make one left. So I know that I will be using this front page all the time. And then on the second page, I've got the knit through the back loop. I don't know, this is like an easy one. Can't ever remember it. I don't know. And then on our next two pages, I've got knit front and back. Again, it's not that hard, I just can't remember it. And Kitchener stitch, so finishing off for socks and things like that. I can't ever keep track of the order of the knit off, purl on, knit off, purl off, knit off. I can't keep it in my brain, so it's in there. And then on the last page is mattress stitch. This is one I think that I just like overthink this one because I always read about the V's and inserting the V's, and I look at the knitting and it all looks like V's and I just can't get there. So I put a diagram on there too. And I am really excited. I think that this is going to be an incredibly useful thing for me. And it fits in my craft bag. Thank you for watching. I had so much fun making this little thing today, and I hope that maybe your takeaway from this is that you can make your own. I am considering sharing this online, like putting it up as a PDF, so if you wanted to use mine and print it, you could. So if you're interested in that, just let me know. But I think that this is something that everybody could just make one for themselves. You know, it doesn't have to be just for me or just specific to me, but you could put in information about stuff that you can't remember. Maybe you're a newer knitter and you're still trying to remember how to knit into purl. You could put that information in. Maybe you crochet. I don't know too much about crochet, but putting in info about different crochet moves that you might need a little bit of help on. Even I'm thinking like if you're a painter and you're working on color and color theory, you could have different color combinations in a zine that you could then access, which I think would be very useful, or different types of shading or different information about perspective for drawing. I just think that there's a lot of room to play with a little zine for whatever your specific craft is. And I think it's something that it lets you think a little bit more about what you want to focus on. And I am thinking, honestly, I spent so much time thinking about all of these things that I can't ever remember while I was making this, that maybe that's the first step in actually remembering it. That way I have this as a resource, but I would love to build it into my memory so that I don't always have to check back at this. But anyway, I hope you enjoyed. I hope that you are working on something that is making you happy, and I will see you next time. Bye.